Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about all 10 books that I read in the month of April. I honestly can't believe that some of these I read at the beginning of the month because it feels like I read them forever ago. But overall I had a pretty okay month. This wasn't the most amount of books that I have read. I was a little bit busy with school, which kind of kept me from reading I think as much as I wanted to, and I did feel a little bit slumpy at times. As for the formatting, I read 4 audiobooks and 6 physical books. And then for the genres, I read 7 romance books and 3 fantasy books. This was definitely my least diverse month in terms of genres. I feel like I don't know what happened, honestly. But let's get right into the first book that I finished. First up was actually an ARC, and this was Passion Project by London Sperry. Thank you to NetGalley and the publisher for this e-arc. I saw so many good things about this on Bookstagram, and so going into it, I was super duper excited. This basically follows our main female character, Bennett, who lives in New York City, and she is currently dealing with the loss of her late boyfriend. She's dealing with a lot of grief throughout this story, and she ends up meeting Henry. And throughout this book, her and Henry kind of go on these little kind of adventures to kind of help her find her passion. This book has a very heavy New York setting, so if you like New York City, this is definitely a book that you could enjoy the setting of. I will say at times this book was a little bit heavy just because Bennett is really going through it. She is very depressed. I think that she self-sabotaged a lot in this book, and so at times it was just a little bit frustrating to read, even though you do kind of understand and know what she is going through, which she just is really stuck and is working through this kind of rough patch. I think that Henry was a very sweet and patient male main character and really did help Bennett in so many ways, but I just kind of wish that at times there was a little bit more pushback from him. That's all I'm going to say on that. And honestly, I don't even really remember a lot of this story. It felt like so long ago. I will say it was very bingeable. I think I read this in a couple of days. I don't think I ever said, but I gave this a 3.5 stars. This was a good debut, but I think just at times our main character, I just wanted her to maybe get help a little bit earlier in the book from like a professional. Next up was an audiobook, and that was Lore of the Wilds by Annalise Sabrana. I did start reading this physically, but I ended up getting the audiobook from the library, so I ended up just listening to it that way. I will just read the back kind of title on what this is about. It says, "A library with a deadly enchantment, a fey lord who wants in, and a human woman willing to risk it all for a taste of power." So, based off of that, you may think that this takes place in a magical library, and it does for maybe about not even 5% of the book, maybe. Don't go into this expecting a magical library because she's not in the library for long. That's all I'm gonna say on that part. But I gave this 3 stars. It was entertaining to listen to. By the end, I was maybe a little bit bored just because I was really expecting more of that library setting, and you really don't get that for much of this book. As you can see, there are 3 people on the cover, so you think, okay, love triangle. There was no chemistry, in my opinion, between any of them. So I don't, this is an adult fantasy, but in my opinion, this kind of read a lot like YA. I just don't think that the main character felt very mature. She felt very childish. And also, in a fantasy book, sometimes certain curse words or swear words just kind of take me out of the story. Like, they said crap a lot in this book. Not that that's a swear word, but they said that a lot in this book. And as I was listening to it, I'm just kind of like, crap, like, why do you know what that word is? And they also said some other ones, and I'm just kind of like, it just kind of takes me out of the story. I don't really know why. I do know that this is a duology, and I think that the next one is coming out soon, but unfortunately I don't think I will continue. Next up is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabat Tahir. This came out over 10 years ago, and it definitely does have that kind of dystopian feeling where there are people in power and then there are people that they are kind of enslaving, and it kind of is a story about an uprising and these people rebelling and trying to fight back. This book was incredibly high stakes throughout the whole book. I was on the edge of my seat. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I read this in 2 days. That's how like enthralled I was by this book. The only thing I will say is that there was a little bit of a dud. I can't really say exactly about what. I think I was just getting a little bit antsy towards the end because it was so high stakes. I just really needed to know what was going to happen. This follows Leia, and her brother was taken as he was suspected of being a rebel. She ends up kind of infiltrating the form of like military school, and she meets Elias, who is the finest soldier, but he actually kind of resents what the country is doing. So throughout this book, it is just trial after trial after trial of, oh my gosh, are they going to be okay? Like, what's going to happen? I really, really enjoyed this. I think that the cover is stunning, and also the spines when they're all lined up, because this is a series, there's 4 books, make like a whole picture. It's so stunning, so beautiful. I am very, very excited to continue this series. I have the box set, so I definitely want to read the next one sometime soon. I don't know when, but maybe sometime in May I'll get to this. But I just really, really enjoyed this. It was just so, so enthralling. Up next is an audiobook, and that was Summer in the City by Alex Astor. I gave this 3.5 stars, and I think maybe looking back it might just be a 3. This book was my first book by this author. This was her first romance. Normally she writes fantasy. She has the Lightlark series. This book, again, takes place in New York City. I'm reading a lot of those recently. And as always, I really do enjoy a New York City setting. This is also a billionaire romance, so our main male character is a billionaire. He has a lot of money. And basically, they meet years ago at a club. They both kind of judge each other, and they have just a not very pleasant meeting, and she holds a very, very big grudge against him for many, many years to come. They end up meeting again and fake dating for a little while, so it just kind of follows that. However, I just didn't really enjoy our main female character. She has very strong views and values about money. It is eventually explained in the book about why and kind of what shaped those values and beliefs, but still it was just a little bit frustrating to read about, especially since this is a billionaire romance and the main male character does have a lot of money. How she was kind of just rude to him at times aggravated me a little bit and just kind of made it a little bit unpleasant to listen to. I will say our main male character was very understanding and did try to accommodate to her beliefs and values, but still it was just a very big topic in this book, and it was just fine. You know, not anything memorable, not anything crazy. Next up was a very, very anticipated read for me, and this was Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I gave this 2.75 stars. Unfortunately, I really, really enjoyed Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. It came out last year, and it was my first 5-star of the year, actually. This, however, was just not it for me. This book was very, very insta-lovey. From right off the bat, basically they're together and dating, and it just felt very, very quick. There wasn't a lot of buildup, and I just think that this book was very, very heavy. This book follows Xavier, who is a veterinarian, and Samantha. They both live in Minnesota, I believe, and Samantha is actually moving to help take care of her mom, who has early onset dementia. This book focuses a lot about her and her family helping take care of her mother. It felt like there was one bad thing after another happening in this book, with very little payoff and reward actually making those bad moments worth it. It just was a little bit difficult to get through and to kind of root for the characters because they got together so quick, and I feel like in normal circumstances this would not actually happen. And it also felt like one of the characters was putting a lot more effort in than the other and really sacrificing a lot to the point of like their health, and it just didn't feel always reciprocated at times. Throughout this book, I was really wondering how this book was going to end because it just felt like they couldn't get a break, first of all, and it also just felt like I had no idea where it was going to go and how it was going to end. Of course, Abby Jimenez's writing is very, very easy. It's very simple, and it makes it very easy to read. However, this book was also very modern in the references. There was a lot of TikTok references, which I do think are funny sometimes. There were a lot of mentions of Rhysand in this from ACOTAR, and it's like, that's maybe a little bit too niche, in my opinion, in terms of like describing how our male main character looks. And I feel like not everybody is going to know what Rhysand looks like. So why don't you just explain to us what he looks like rather than comparing him like 10 times to Rhysand. I really, really wanted to love this, but I just really didn't like it. And I think it put me in a little bit of a slump, I hate to say. Up next, we have Wildside by Elsie Silver. I did listen to the audiobook of this because I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy it. I gave this 4.5 stars, so needless to say, I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised by this. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I feel like I've seen a couple mixed things about it. This is the 3rd book in the Rose Hill series. So this follows Rhys and Tabby. Rhys is a WWE wrestler. Tabby is dealing with the loss of her sister, and with that, the custody that she is now assuming of her sister's child. But with that, there are some kind of complications, and Rhys also has custody of the child. And so they're kind of both figuring out how to go about this situation, and there is a marriage of convenience in this. I really, really enjoyed this. I loved the banter between the two characters. It just was funny. There was a lot of chemistry in my opinion. I know that some people weren't in love with the whole WWE aspect, which I can understand. It wasn't like my favorite thing just because like he kind of is talking about acting and in that sense, and it's kind of like, well, okay, but maybe a little bit cringy. I honestly didn't mind it too much. I really liked the moment between Reese, Tabby, and Milo. And I also really liked the ending of this. Sometimes in romance books, the third act conflict gives me the ick and just ruins the story for me. But in this one, I really, really liked how it ended. I just had a great time listening to this. I was really rooting for the characters in this one. Next up was another book that I was a little bit unsure about, and rightfully so. This was Fearless by Lauren Roberts. I gave this 2.5 stars. This is the third and final book in the Powerless trilogy. I don't want to say too much about what it's about, just in case you haven't read the beginning books, but in the beginning books, it follows Peyton, our main female character, as she is kind of in these trials in this country that they're in. You basically have to have a power. They're called elites, but Peyton doesn't have any power, so she is kind of posing as an elite in this tournament. I really didn't love the first book in the series too much. So many people loved it that I wasn't sure if it was me or if it was the book. So I did read the second one. I listened to the audiobook and I actually kind of liked the audiobook. I had a pretty enjoyable time listening to it. So going into this one, I really did not know what to expect. I was, first of all, very, very surprised by how thick this book is. It's like 600 pages. It is very, very long, maybe even too long. I was very bored throughout a lot of this book. It felt very slow. Certain parts felt very, very repetitive. This book felt like it took years to finish, honestly, and it felt like no matter how much I was reading, I just wasn't making any progress in it. I was a little bit interested around like 250 pages in, but that just felt like way, way, way too long into the book for it to finally get interesting to me. I definitely can see that some people enjoy Lauren Roberts' writing, but I think something about it just doesn't really click with me. The male main character felt a little bit too down bad for the female main character. Like, he just kept saying the same lines over and over about how much he loves her and how he would do anything for her, and it just felt a little bit repetitive to read, and especially because it didn't feel like it was always reciprocated from the female main character. I know a lot of people talk about how this series is very, very similar to the Red Queen series, and as someone who just reread Red Queen back in December, this book was like copy paste certain things. It was absolutely insane. I kind of forgot what certain things were in this world, and I couldn't remember if it was from this book or from Red Queen that I was like remembering. That's how similar they are. I found a lot of this book to be very, very predictable, and the one thing at the end was just kind of odd, in my opinion. By the end, I was just so glad to finish it. But I will say it does have a happy ending. Happy-ish ending. But overall, I just cannot say that I enjoyed this. I really wish I did, but I did not. Up next is another audiobook, and this was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This is a very easy, simple YA story. There is a Netflix show on it, which is why I listened to the audiobook. I have watched and pretty enjoyed the show. Or sorry, it's an Amazon Prime show. It's not Netflix. It was very, very easy to get through. The only thing I will say as an audiobook, they didn't always say when there was a time jump, so it was a little bit confusing to try to differentiate when certain things were taking place and if it was in the present or if it was like a flashback. This basically follows Belly. I think she's around 15 or 16, and every summer her and her mom and her brother go to this beach house in Cousins Beach, and they spend the summer with her mom's best friend and her 2 sons. And it basically just follows a kind of story about when Belly's kind of reaching this age where she is kind of growing into herself and kind of becoming pretty. This honestly isn't anything special. It's a YA book, so you're kind of going in with a younger feeling of writing. The characters are obviously more like childish at times. I do want to continue the series just because I know that the next season is coming out on Prime soon, so I kind of want to know what to expect. And it was interesting to see how certain characters compared in the book to in the show. But just a very easy summer read. Next up is The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings, and I gave this 5 stars. I did originally give this 4.5 stars, but I have just been thinking about it a lot, so I did round up my rating. But basically this follows our main female character, Georgia. She currently lives in London and is studying behavioral psychology, I believe. So she's basically kind of like a human lie detector. She's able to really read people and kind of watch their body language and kind of determine how they're feeling, if they're really meaning what they're saying. And in the beginning of this, she is notified that her father has passed away, so she needs to go to South Carolina where she grew up and where her family lives. Georgia has a very, very complicated relationship with her family. It is very dramatic, very toxic. You basically just kind of see her rekindling some of these relationships with her family members. There is a romance in this book. It is between her older brother's AA sponsor, and it kind of creates a lot of tension between the siblings. I haven't read a Jessa book in so long, it feels, and so I had to adjust a little bit to her writing. Her writing is very, very descriptive in terms of like metaphors, similes, but I really enjoy that. I was so engaged throughout this entire book. I was so interested to see what was going to happen and how things were going to progress. I will say the plot twist, one part of it was a little bit predictable, but I still really, really enjoyed this. I will say this romance does happen very, very fast and is maybe just a little bit unrealistic, but I wouldn't even say that I really loved this for the romance aspect. I mostly enjoyed it for the kind of family relationships and kind of getting to see how everything played out and how certain things were kind of rekindled. I just really, really enjoyed this. This was beautiful. I loved this. This book is kind of in like the Magnolia Parks universe. There are mentions to certain characters, most specifically from Daisy Hates. It does mention like Daisy and Henry, so you kind of get to see some cameos if you have read the Magnolia Parks books. And the last book that I read in April was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I absolutely love Emily Henry. Book Lovers was the book that got me back into reading 3 years ago now. This book is described as being different from Emily Henry's other works. It's definitely more a little bit literary fiction in terms of there's a lot of plot and there is like a subplot of romance. This story follows Alice, and she is a aspiring biographer, and she gets the opportunity to write a biography for this kind of heiress that is in her 80s now. Although she has this opportunity, it's not so simple. She is basically in a competition between another biographer named Hayden. They're both kind of vying for this position to write this biography. Throughout this book, they're both kind of in like a trial where it's a month-long period where they're just interviewing her and kind of seeing which will be the best fit. There is a romance between Alice and Hayden. I think when I read this, I had very, very high expectations, and I had seen a lot of people love it or kind of not love it. I was definitely expecting to be one of the people that loved it, and I do really enjoy this. I had an amazing time reading it, but I think something about it, I can't even really say what about this towards the end just like was a little bit off to me. I enjoyed the whole story throughout. I thought it was very, very interesting, very engaging, but just by the end I was just a little bit off about something. I don't know if it was the reveal. I'm not 100% sure. I really don't know, but I gave this, I don't know if I said this, but I gave this 4 stars. I still really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite Emily Henry book, but I still really enjoyed it. I did tab quite a bit of it. I think that her prose in this is beautiful as always. Her writing is just so amazing in my opinion, and this cover is absolutely stunning. This might be one of my favorite covers of all time. I'm so obsessed with it, and the colors, it's just so beautiful to me. I will say I also really enjoyed Alice's optimism. She's a very optimistic character, and I really enjoyed reading from her point of view. It was very refreshing. Overall, I would probably rank this at like number 4 of my Emily Henry rankings, but I still really enjoyed this. It just wasn't my favorite Emily Henry book. Those were all the books that I read in April. I honestly hate to say that I feel like I can't remember reading a lot of them. They just kind of left me at this point, but I definitely found some new favorites and some new series that I am really looking forward to continue. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have read any of these. I love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you guys in next week's video. Bye!